Hello and welcome to this new episode of Questioning the Answer. We decided to do away with the guest for this week, surely because we want to probe the topic and the guest we have, who's also the co-host on Questioning the Answer. Welcome, Anant. Uh, Today's topic is we're trying to figure out the purpose of life, or the need to have a purpose of life. Uh, I have a very interesting question to start the conversation with. Uh, if I were to give you a 7-year-old kid who just started basically understanding what language and communication is, and you had to explain uh, the purpose of life, would you be able to? And what would it be?
Mm, It's a good question actually because I'd say uh, I wouldn't entirely expect a 7-year-old to grasp uh, what we really mean by purpose in life at such an early stage. But in quite simple terms, I'd try and explain that the purpose would be to try and strike a sort of perfect balance between doing what makes you happy versus more practical concerns and more of a pragmatic outlook towards life. Because what necessarily makes you happy may not be something that you can base a lifestyle on in the long term. So I'd say striking that perfect balance. But for a 7-year-old, I'd just say do what makes you happy. And, I'd say focus on your studies or
Okay, so I'll delve a little on the second part of your answer. I don't know whether a 7-year-old would buy into that argument. He would say, well, if eating chips and watching cartoons makes me happy, I am not harming the world really. And it would be very difficult to dissuade that person from. Uh, Hopefully, the world is a little older than 7 years in our mental state, and we'll be able to find some merit in this conversation between us to start with. So my question would be based on the second part of your answer. You said balance it out with certain practical and pragmatic decisions. What is practical in your head? How do you define that part?
so in uh, I would consider my situation right now. Uh, I'd I'd really like to produce a change in the world that I have learned about so far in my bachelor's and in my master's. I'd like to engage in a lot of volunteering and charity work, ideally. But for now, my short-term pragmatic concern would be to find a job that pays me enough to repay my student loan. So that is an example of a pragmatic concern that I have on hand. And eventually, that job, upon aiding me in paying off this degree or in pursuing other degrees, will aid me in the future in pursuing what I want to do and pursuing what will make me happy.
Okay. Yeah.
The recording. Sorry, you start.
Okay. Yeah. So my question to you is, what you spoke about right now. A lot of it hinges on the future. Um, how certain are we that the purpose of life that you're hoping to live for is going to encompass the kind of reality that you assume will happen in the future? And what do you base this thinking on?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I got your question entirely.
Okay. When you talk about you want to pay off your loan, you want to find a good job that gives you certain kind of satisfaction, and then play a role in this world as you go along. A lot of it hinges on the future plans. It's not immediate as of right now. At the same time, uh, you spoke of practicality earlier. So these two things, in my mind, seem a little away from each other. How do you reconcile the two in your mind when you are looking at purpose?
I'd say in terms of benefits that the job offers, not only material benefits, but in terms of how much leeway the job offers in terms of creativity would be something that I would seek some purpose in. But I'd also try and see how much the job uh, aids me in engaging with the world outside, so that I needn't necessarily put the job aside in my attempt to create a difference in the world.
No, I'll try and be a little more clear in my question. One is a quote unquote, I'm not getting a better word, a fantasy of the future. Uh, it's not to look down upon your plans for the future, but it's a imaginative thing as of right now. Uh, Whereas you spoke of practicality earlier when we were talking about what would you explain to someone uh, about what is purpose. So does that mean that purpose necessarily has to be somewhere in the future, or can it be lived as of right now? How do you reconcile these two things?
I guess the way to keep moving forward in life is to reconfigure and reassess the purpose from time to time. So in the short term, probably it wouldn't do me much good to try and only keep a long-term future purpose in mind, because that would prove everyday activities highly unsatisfying. If I were to consistently dream of something that I'm not really able to work towards right now. So as you said, it needn't necessarily be something in the future. Your day-to-day activities such as having a checklist of eating healthy every day or exercising every day, learning something new every day, that reading the news, being aware, that could be a purpose of sorts.
Okay, so you were saying if there is a overarching purpose to your life or a direction to which you are looking at, maybe not necessarily with a destination in mind, but a vague idea of where you want your life to go. Uh, it can be broken down into little purposes which one is living on a daily basis. Is that what you're trying to say?
That is to make every day uh, contain some achievable activities that give you a sense of personal satisfaction at the end of the day. That I think is important as much as your future long term goals.
Okay. Um, Now the question I want to derive is more internal versus external. Surely because of the examples you gave for external uh, inputs, knowing what's happening in the world, concentrating on the job at hand, and stuff like that. Um, is there anything, any work that needs to happen on an internal front to align yourself on a daily basis towards the direction that you are choosing?
I'd probably say the only internal fact that you'll need in a time of uncertainty as now is consistency and perseverance on a daily basis. Now, with the job market being down and with the entire world almost being in lockdown, the job hunting has been exceptionally difficult because not many companies are hiring right now. But I know for a fact that I have faith in uh, the I have faith in several of the opportunities created in the market all around the world. So on an everyday internal basis, the only point would be persevering in terms of sending around what I do is sending around 15 to 20 apps every day, trying my luck at 15 to 20 different places. And at the end of the day, I'm satisfied in knowing that I did the best I could, and that's all I could have done today in terms of moving towards this long-term goal.
Okay. This is very interesting. This leads me to again the internal and external question, but in a different way altogether. So, if we were to continue the example that you said, on one hand, your internal alignment to the faith, which is not quantifiable, or which cannot be backed up with something that you really know in terms of hardcore knowledge, but it is just the basis of your some kind of belief or faith, like you use the term. Vis-a-vis, there is an actionable thing that you're doing. You're not just sitting with that aspect of, okay, I have believed that there are opportunities and I have talked to these two companies and something will definitely work out. You do realize that those two companies or those four companies may not uh, lead to any kind of results that are up to your satisfaction. So you will really need to work very hard and try 15 to 20 other places. And I do now. My question is, what if out of the 20 places, four of them are abysmally poor in terms of the kind of satisfaction that you're looking for? Because earlier, to the first part of the answer that you gave, do what makes you happy. Now, this is directly going to clash with it. And now, with the context of purpose that we've been speaking about, so now you have a purpose. You got a job which is not satisfying you, which may not take you towards the direction that you kind of have been seeing. How do you reconcile yourself to the situation? Does the purpose stay alive? Does it get realigned? What happens to you? And this is actually a practical question. If I were to ask you, say you're getting a job, your one part, your daily things are taken care of. You're getting the money, you're paying off the loan. It's also perhaps giving you a status. Now, I guess today having a job is a status. And I'm saying, suppose it also fulfills your need for that part, but it need not necessarily feed into what you've been trying to do. How would you handle this clash if it were to happen that way?
So if that is inevitable, which hopefully it won't be, because I have been quite picky and selective to a healthy extent in terms of looking for jobs that make me happy. But if that were hypothetically the case, then yeah, I think there would be a drastic need to reconfigure and reassess my immediate priorities. But in doing so, and if the job is really bad, in enduring the terrible environment of the job, I would seek satisfaction in knowing that I'd be out of this soon and that this is only a short term purpose for now.
Lovely. Um, in a way, I did expect that kind of answer to come. So I want to push this a little more. Say, suppose they were to make you sign a contract that for next 3 years you're not going to get out of this, because they are fulfilling certain other aspects of your life, which is like salary, and which does happen in the real world. They do have terms like those. And because we are giving you a position and this, and you're a newbie, we like your attitude. We think you're fit for the job, and we would want you on the job for a certain amount of time for you to repay what we are doing for you. Uh, if it were that difficult, how would you still uh, go about it? Would you take up the job?
If it is inevitable, which again, hopefully not, but in these COVID times, you never know. So, if it is a 3 year long job that pays well, there will be satisfaction despite how terrible the job is, in knowing that I'll have enough material resources at the end to pursue another degree of choice, maybe that would make me happy, or it would even give me enough time to build on my CV. But on a more personal level, uh, there's always a silver lining. So a bad environment would aid me in, uh, if not learning how to be, it would aid me in learning how not to be, by looking at others and by looking at examples that I shouldn't emulate.
Okay, lovely. Because I would want to stay there a bit, and I have a question there. Um, is this what you meant by realigning, reassessing, and figuring out uh, the long-term goal and the short-term goal both?
it,
Um,
it even it so happens that sometimes the subject of your choice may not be necessarily being taught by a teacher of your choice. You may very well love the subject and want to pursue that, but the people attached to that entire package may not be necessarily nice. So in terms of realigning, that is what I meant, where you can take solace in looking at a person's behavior and reassuring yourself that thank God I'm not like that, or that I'll never be, and that I know a clear example of uh, uh, the kind of people that, if given a choice, to avoid in the future.
okay.